Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Expanding into a New Market, featuring Union Bank and Trust. My name is Jenny Tukeski, and I am the Programming and Communications Manager here at the Better Business Bureau of Midwest Plains. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes for you. First, this session was pre-recorded to ensure we deliver the best possible content. If you have any questions regarding this webinar today, please feel free to reach out to us and we will make sure we guide you to any follow-up with Ryan if needed. We're also sending out a follow-up email to you with a link to the webinar, but also the presentation information for you, as well as additional links too to help you out for future reference. Today's session will be insightful as we explore the key components of entering a new market. We'll cover everything from conducting effective market research to understanding local expectations and evaluating whether product or services are right for the area that you're looking to expand into. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Ryan Sahd, who is Colorado Regional President for Union Bank and Trust. He oversees operation and drives growth in lending, treasurer, and wealth management. With 24 years of experience, he previously served as Executive Vice President at a local community bank where he grew teams, mentored emerging bankers, and managed commercial lending portfolios exceeding $1 billion. Ryan, we greatly appreciate your time today, and it is all yours.
Well, thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks for giving myself and Union Bank and Trust the opportunity to share what we've learned in expanding into new markets. Just a little bit more about myself. So I spent the last 20 years with First Bank here in Colorado, which is the largest, at that point, was the largest privately held bank in Colorado. Got close to about 30 billion in assets and then retracted a little bit over the past few years, and now, as most of you might have heard, is being acquired by PNC. In the fall of 2024, I took a role with Union Bank and Trust out of Lincoln, Nebraska, to expand their banking presence into Colorado. And Union Bank and Trust is not new to expanding into new markets. Over their 60-plus year tenure, Union Bank and Trust has expanded into new markets multiple times, into Omaha, into Johnson County, in Kansas City, and others. And so, we've seen, what it's like to expand into new markets and to do it organically. A lot of banks, I think, would have taken the approach of, there's two ways that you can do it. You can enter into a new market by acquisition, or you can enter into a new market organically. And Union Bank and Trust decided to do it organically, which I'm thankful that they did, because I believe that that's the best way to preserve your culture and to make sure that your expansion aligns with kind of your, who makes you who you are. And Union Bank and Trust is very protective of that culture and doesn't want anything to disrupt it, which is why, acquisitions aren't something that we look to do all the time. So, a little bit about what we're going to be going over here today is, through my experience as a lender and working with clients that have expanded into new markets and seeing, kind of what challenges they face and what motivations they have, as well as Union Bank and Trust specifically and expanding into a new market. We'll look at how expanding into a new market can unlock customers and obviously create long-term growth. We'll talk a little bit about the risks, right? About how expansion done poorly can actually damage your core business, and that's not what we want. The goal is obviously not growth at all costs. We want to have durable, repeatable success. So the more that you can think about, why you're expanding and what you're looking to accomplish, the higher odds are that you're going to be successful. So really today's session, I think, is about helping you decide if, when, and how to expand so that you can, feel confident that you're doing it and that you're going to be successful. So what we want to start with, I think, is really just not just geography, but really strategy. So that's just kind of being a little bit more introspective in terms of yourself and your business, I'm making the assumption here that we're talking to, small business owners, medium-sized business owners that you've worked hard through the years to grow up your business, and you feel like you're successful. I have to assume that a business would not be looking to expand unless you feel like you've kind of captured, the majority of what you're doing currently. So that's that introspection. Look at your strengths. What are you doing well? What sets you apart? Is that success unique to you and your current market, or is it ubiquitous? And that's really important, right? I mean, is there anything in your current market that's really key to your success and to your growth, and how well is that going to translate to other markets? Um, you need to look at your weaknesses. What are the areas that you still need to improve? I really encourage people that you want your core business to be as strong and as stable as possible before you start looking to expand, because I believe that expanding into new markets will really just it'll highlight any weaknesses that you have. So I mean, you might be able to cover up some weaknesses in your current market, and where you've seen your current growth. As you start expanding, I think that those will be revealed very quickly. Why are you looking to expand? Is it simply just um, growth related? I would assume so, right? I mean, it's you feel saturated in your current market and you're looking to expand. Um, and then how well, again, will your success translate? So what's made you successful so far? How well is it going to translate into a new market? And that's probably more of the geography part, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about how that works. So as we talked about, is your current advantage what you're doing well? Is it market specific or is it market agnostic? Meaning, is it something that's really going to translate into a new market? Um, the unique strengths that you have versus universal strengths. Some of those don't travel quite as well. So before you look at where you're going to expand, be honest about your why. Is your current market truly saturated, like we talked about, or are you just feeling comfortable? Um, you're thinking about what's made you successful so far. Look at your brand, look at your relationships, your products and your services. Um, how are you going to recreate that? So I mean, really pinpoint what's made you successful and how can you recreate that in a new market. Um, if your advantage only exists because of kind of your local expertise, well, expanding into a new market could be a little bit challenging, right? I mean, if your success is entirely due to the leadership, your local leadership, and the relationships that you've built and the brand that you've built, well, that could be challenging going into a new market. And I think that that's a little bit what UBT has realized, and what we've been able to do here in Fort Collins was UBT started with the leadership. So Union Bank and Trust is extremely successful in Lincoln, Nebraska. A long brand, been there since 1963, um, and they have a lot of brand recognition. And they know what they do well. How they've grown, how they've been successful. And then when they went to look at expanding into Fort Collins, one of the main things that they started with, and this is what I would have done as well, is look at the leader. Who's going to be leading that market? How well do they align with your current culture, with how you do business? Is it a natural alignment? Are they going to be a natural extension with of your brand and your business, or is it something that's going to be forced? And a big part of why you want to look at that is because your leadership bandwidth is finite. There's only so much that you can pay attention to at once. So, in our case, Union Bank and Trust, leadership in Lincoln can't be on site in Fort Collins micromanaging every little thing. They have to trust that leadership in Fort Collins is going to be that natural extension. So, expansion is going to naturally stretch leadership's bandwidth, uh, not just physically in terms of potentially, having to, visit the new market, research the new market, but it takes up some of your mental space, right? So, I mean, just expect that if you're looking to expand, it's going to take up some of your mental bandwidth. you want to be careful to make sure that you don't get overextended. That your core business doesn't start to suffer as a result. So before you start looking to expand, make sure that your local leadership is solid, that you communicate with everyone, that everyone's on the same page in terms of what expansion is going to take, what sacrifices are going to have to be made, and that that your existing leadership where you're at is going to support you, right? Is going to support, and everyone knows their role. Maybe they're involved in that expansion, maybe they're not, but you want to make sure that you have delegated roles. Um, to have everyone know what they're going to be doing and how they're going to be playing into that expansion. And that's where we say delegation is just simply not optional. It's not something that you can't do an expansion all on your own. You'll get overextended. Your core business will suffer, and your likelihood of success in the new market will suffer as well. So, I mean, having strong leadership and knowing exactly who's going to be managing what is extremely important. Strong leadership. You heard me just talk about it. What are you looking for in leaders? And I think this is probably more geared towards who your leaders are going to be in the new market. I think that we're operating under the assumption that you already have strong leadership where you're at that can support you in this new venture. One of the boards that I serve on is an organization called Step Denver, located out of downtown Denver, provides housing and sobriety services to help men who are struggling with addiction get back up on their feet, become a productive part of society, reconcile with their families, and it's a powerful organization that I would encourage you to look into. Well, we just recently expanded into Colorado Springs, and it was a great kind of case study for how you do an expansion well. We looked at a lot of different options. We looked at possibly expanding into other states, and we ultimately came to the conclusion that it would have just taken up so much energy and time that the odds of our success would have been very low because we didn't know those other states. Whereas going an hour down the road, allowed us to be able to use some of our leadership from Denver to move down to the Springs, part time, some of them full time. But that's going to make sure that we have that cultural alignment, right? Leadership in both locations, everyone has to be on the same page in terms of your company culture, your mission, your priorities, what you're going to do, and how you're going to do it. What makes you who you are? It makes trust and autonomy, a lot easier. The leader that you have in the new location, you have to be able to trust them. You do not want to be micromanaging them. Support. But if you're micromanaging that person, if you feel like you have to, then it's going to be really challenging for you to effectively lead the expansion and the business that you've already built. So again, you do not want to be micromanaging. That will not be a key to success. If you can't find the right leader, then I would encourage you to just keep looking and don't expand until you have that leader identified. We talked about this a little bit, and UBT. It was not a quick decision. Moving into Colorado, it wasn't quick for either of us. I wasn't willing to, give up what I had worked for over 20 years in the leadership role that I had with First Bank. I wasn't willing to give that up unless I knew that I was going to be joining up with a team and starting a venture that would be successful. And thankfully, Union Bank and Trust leadership was in the same boat. It was a slow process. They talked to a lot of different potential candidates. We spoke to each other for over 12 months. I visited Lincoln, and that was really a big part, I think, for both sides of the equation. Myself and Union Bank and Trust is, that's when I visited Lincoln in person. We were able to realize that it was going to be a strong cultural fit, and that I was a natural extension of what they wanted to do, and that was a key part of what was going to make us successful. But that was after a year of myself doing due diligence, Union Bank and Trust, them doing due diligence on myself, so that we had that strong confidence going into it. So what did we do in expanding here? What did the nonprofit I mentioned, Step Denver, do? Um, you know, as you can imagine, it starts with market knowledge. It starts with researching the new market that you're going into, understanding what the elements are of that market that correlate with your current market. So we looked at what made us successful in Lincoln. Step Denver looked at what made us successful in Denver, and then did market studies. For Fort Collins, when UBT is expanding here, we did quite a bit of market studies to see like what are the changes, or what are the similarities that Fort Collins has to Lincoln. How will it translate? And we realized that, first of all, there's a lot of Nebraska individuals that have transplanted to northern Colorado. A lot of people from Nebraska vacation to Colorado and are familiar with it, end up moving out here. So there's a lot of Nebraska folks in northern Colorado. That helped. Lincoln is a college town. Fort Collins is a college town. They're not too similar in average age, demographics, average household income, growth rates. So, that was a big piece of what, we ultimately determined would help Fort Collins be successful. Imagine the difference that it would have been, if we tried to recreate what we're doing and, went to downtown Chicago. Well, that would have been a little bit more challenging. That's not as straightforward of a, extension in terms of what made us successful historically. So market knowledge is huge. Know where you're going. Know what it is that's going to translate. Product market fit. We had to be confident that UBT and what we do would resonate with Northern Colorado, and it certainly has. We researched our competition. So we looked at the other competitors in the area, mainly privately held banks, and determined, okay, well, how are our products and services going to compete? And we determined that it would compete very well. We know, ultimately what makes banking successful, and these are kind of the transferable fundamentals. I knew that there's certain ubiquitous elements of banking that work in every market. What do people want in banking? Well, in general, they want high touch service. They want to know that they matter. No one wants to be just to feel like they're just a number at their bank and that no one knows them. If there's some sort of an issue that comes up in their accounts, well, they don't want to have to deal with a representative over the phone, or even worse, a chat bot. They want to have someone that they can call, that they know them and they have that relationship and they know that person's going to go to bat for them and take care of them. They want low red tape. People want, whether it's when you're applying for a loan or you have God forbid, a fraud or something on your account, something that needs to be addressed. Well, they don't want to have to deal with multiple departments and have it take place over multiple weeks. They want it done right away, and they want to know who they're going to be working with. And then obviously, banking, it's very important that you have competitive rates and terms. I mean, you can provide the best service possible, but if your banking products are too expensive, or if you're not paying competitive rates on accounts, or if your loan rates are too high, then you're just not going to be successful. So we knew that those were the elements that kind of translate everywhere for banking. We knew that our market aligned well with what's made us successful in Lincoln. And then we had strong confidence in the leadership in the new market. And that's really what's helped us be successful here over the first year of our operations. So when you're looking, going into a new market, you're looking at, what are you going to be doing, with your existing business versus expanding into the new business. So when you're running the business and doing the business, you're defining the vision, strategy, and goals. You're building meaningful relationships. You're reinforcing trust and accountability. That's part of doing the business. And then running the business, is obviously, executing processes and workflows, managing people and performances, maintaining discipline and consistency. Some owners are exceptional at doing the business. These are more of your high level thinkers. Other owners are exceptional at running the business. And really, what you're trying to do, I think, as a leader, is just be honest about what your strengths are. Are you really good at the high level visionary side of things? And if you are, then you've probably already surrounded yourself with people that are really good at the details. They're good at the getting down into the weeds, and that's just part of building your team. And how important it is to build your team. So just be honest with who you're at, and then you're going to work towards surrounding yourself with the right people that can help you succeed. So in your case, that could probably include, I'm putting myself, I know my strengths and my weaknesses. I'm much better at operating at a high level. I'm more of a kind of a visionary thinker. I don't do quite as well getting down into the weeds, and so I've realized over time that I need to surround myself with people I can trust that have the strengths that I don't. So if I was running a business, I would make sure that I had a strong CFO and bookkeeper, someone that can manage the financials and present it to me on a regular basis. And then once I have them, then I can kind of determine where we're at and provide some guidance from there. But these are just examples of what your team probably already looks like, especially when you're all businesses and leaders should have trusted advisors. We all have blind spots, and we want to know what they are. Every good leader wants to be honest with where they're at. So that's where those trusted advisors come in. There's a lot of different peer groups that exist. So I know here in Fort Collins, there's a handful of different business leader support groups, if you will, that meet on a regular basis, and everyone has a chance to talk about the challenges and the opportunities for their business and get kind of peer support. So between peer mentor groups and kind of one-on-one leadership advisors, those are kind of non-negotiable. I mean, if you don't have anyone that you can bounce ideas off of, then you're probably going to want to be pretty careful about expansion. You want to have people that can that you can work through this with and make sure that it's a sound idea. So we talked about this a little bit, doing your research. That's making a business plan, doing your market background research, understanding where you're going. From there, I think that you need to produce a pro forma. You need to understand, have a comprehensive business plan with a pro forma, have the numbers, align with the business plan. I can't tell you how many times I'll have a business owner sitting in front of me discussing something that they're looking to do, whether it's a expansion locally or expansion into a new market. And I'll ask them to see their business plan and their pro forma, and they don't have it readily available. And that's always interesting to me, and it's certainly would be a red flag. So I mean, if you're looking at expanding into a new market, and especially if you need debt for that, if you're looking for investment dollars or borrowing from a bank, just know that whoever you're going to be sitting across the desk from is going to want to see that. And the more prepared you can look and be, not just look, but actually be prepared, that's going to give a greater level of comfort to whoever you're looking for investment dollars or for financing. When you're running your pro forma and your business plan, don't do it with just rose-colored glasses. I mean, you really need to be critical of it, and this is where your peer group and your mentor can help as well, and even a good banker. I've had customers ask me like, "Oh, hey, I want you to poke holes in this. I want to know where we're what we're not thinking of clearly," and I always value that opportunity. But being able to identify, okay, if things go horribly, like in our worst possible scenario, what does it look like? How bad would it be for us? And then what's our kind of base case? How do we expect it to go? And then, of course, what's our best case? So it's good to know what all three of those are. Don't plan for the best case. I mean, I'm more of the type of person, I like to kind of plan for the worst case. And if it still is tolerable, then I know that I have a good option. Um, so asking the hard questions, can you live with the worst case? That's your kind of your downside tolerance. If you expand into a new market and your expansion, goes well, then or at least is tolerable, then you're okay. What's the impact to your cash flow? Can your core business support the new market if it takes longer than expected? That's really important. How are you going to be funding it? Are you going to have investors? What type of tolerance do your investors have? How's your bank going to fund the expansion if applicable? Are there covenants associated with any financing that you could potentially trip? So those are kind of part of the financial modeling side of things that you need to really make sure you have ironed out. We're talking about this, just how are you funding the expansion? Some people are fortunate enough that they can expand, without external capital, without bank financing, without having to raise investor dollars. If you can do that, that's wonderful. That puts you in a really safe spot when you're not, having to report to other people. But at the same time, yeah, I would encourage you to really treat it as if you are having to report to someone else, as if you are having to put together a business plan for a bank or report to outside investors, because that process of getting cross-checked and challenged is extremely important in terms of making sure that your plan is likely to succeed. So not having or funding it with all internal capital is not equal to no discipline. So don't shortcut the process. Do your research. Treat it like an investment. Putting together a business plan, talking to your advisors, that will just increase your odds of success. So, kind of final takeaways here. Expanding with confidence, not assumptions. Right? We're not assuming anything. We're trying to be as objective as we can be about who we are, what's made us successful. How do we see that translating into a new market? Do your research. Don't go fast. That's speaking from someone that has a tendency to move fast. But thankfully I have people around me that slow me down and realize that I have a tendency to kind of build a plane as I'm flying. But there's times for that, and there's times to slow down and make sure that you really understand what you're doing. And when you're looking to expand a business, that's a time to slow down. Don't outgrow leadership capacity. So you have to know how much bandwidth you have. You have to be honest about it, and don't get overextended. Make sure that you hire strong leaders, wherever you're going to be expanding into. Whether it's we have a restaurant franchise that's expanded into other markets, Oklahoma, into the Nevada. And every time they expand, they're in multiple states, but they talk about just how important it is to have that local GM and their team there that can manage everything, so that they don't have to micromanage it. Extremely important. Know your numbers. Make sure that you have people around you that can help you with your pro forma, that can challenge you, and make sure that you're disciplined in your process. So kind of everything that we've talked about. Well, thanks. That concludes everything. And hopefully we didn't go through it too fast, but hopefully we can have a productive Q&A session. But that's just kind of our summary of just how we see expansions going with a lot of our clients that expand into new markets, and kind of what we've experienced here at the bank. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. What economic trends could impact success within the market within the next 3 to 5 years, would you say?
Gosh, that's a great question. Within the next 3 to 5 years, economic trends. Boy, this is an interesting time. Expansion is no different than any other type of investment, right? And anyone who does anything with equities, knows that you don't fight the market. And some people would say, you don't fight the Fed. So, if you're looking to expand or if you're looking to make that type of investment, I would encourage you to just kind of do a little bit of your own research and really understand what you think is going to be happening in terms of are you going to have a tailwind or a headwind, with the economy. Right now, at this very point in time, and we're recording this on Monday, April 13th. So the Strait of Hormuz is in a blockade. We have no certainty at all what's going to happen with oil, with the other commodities that come through the strait. I think that it's showing to be more difficult than we thought to create some sort of a ceasefire and get that strait opened. If we don't have that strait opened, soon, I think that the trickle down ramifications economically could be pretty dire. I think that we could find ourselves in an inflationary setup later in this year that's not going to be pretty. Oil is not going to be coming back down anytime soon. I would certainly be sitting on my hands right now, and I am, in terms of any sort of equity investment. But if I was in the middle of any sort of meaningful investment that I wasn't pot committed to right now, I'd probably be sitting on my hands until I have a little bit more clarity of what's going to happen. Because I think that the next 12 months could be really interesting depending on what happens here geopolitically.
Great. What are the most common pitfalls you see with businesses expanding into a new market?
Well, most of it is what we kind of discussed, but it's just not doing their research, and leadership getting overextended. And this can be expansion in general. So, like, a really good example could be, I knew a craft brewer once that had a really successful, tap house, right? Where they had some food, they had their beers on tap, and people loved to go there. It was really successful. And then they decided they wanted to try to distribute. And I don't believe that they came to us for financing. We did not finance it because it was clear to me that they hadn't done their research, and they didn't know just how challenging it could be to try to go from brewing your own beer and having a tap house, brew pub, to distributing. And they realized that really quickly, and it was not successful for them, and that was sad to see. But it had to do with a leader that was passionate about what they did, but didn't have the team around them to help them truly research an expansion and determine whether it would be successful.
What types of loans or credit options are best suited for expansions for the companies?
Well, I think it depends on what type of expansion they're looking to do. I mean, generally, there's multiple types of loans that would be involved. So, but again, it really depends on what type of business it is. Whether it's a restaurant or a service company, or whatever type of business it is. But usually, there's some sort of capex, kind of long-term capex requirement. Whether you're buying a new building or equipment, whatever the case might be. So those would be term loans that you would expect, either traditional bank loans or SBA loans. But those would be term debt with fixed payments. And then there's almost certainly going to be some degree of working capital requirement where you need to fund a operating loss for a period of time, or just kind of funding startup. There's going to be, when I'm looking at a pro forma for any sort of new venture or expansion, and I don't see a certain period of operating in the red before kind of get to a break even point. That's always a red flag of mine, because I know it's going to happen. When you expand someplace new, there's going to be a ramp up period, and how are you going to fund that working capital shortfall? So usually there's going to be a line of credit for working capital. There's going to be some sort of term debt for your fixed assets.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other last words or anything that you want to say before we end here today?
No, I don't think so. This was fun to do a webinar. I enjoyed it. I know that every business is different. Not every expansion is going to look the same. which is given that there's not one size that fits all, that's all the more reason why I encourage everyone to just surround yourself with smart people, build a strong bench, where you're at. Try to get in front of as many, smart people that are good at what you're not, so that you have that team around you, because that's really going to be critical in your success.
Perfect. Thank you. Uh, just real quick, as a reminder, we will be sending out that follow-up email for you that will include a link to the webinar today, the presentation materials, as well as a short survey link too. We greatly appreciate your feedback as we continually work to improve on our programs and providing meaningful resources for you and for our community. On behalf of the Bureau, I would like to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day today to join us. We hope that there was value in today's webinar for you and that you're able to take some of the components and put them into practice for the expansion of and growth of your business. Also, Ryan, thank you so much for your time and your clarity today about expansions and the needs that people need to really do their research on before expanding and going from there. And then also just from your expertise alone, I think is a great insight. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Hope everybody has a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you soon.